Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Parts Talk. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. Honda has announced they are building 4 new plants to help produce electric vehicles here in Ontario, but concerns are arising and questions are asking why the government of Canada is involved using billions of taxpayers' dollars to lower and spend on new investments coming into Canada. A new term has been coined, calling it corporate welfare, replacing the term federal tax incentives or federal tax credit. But before the announcement was official, CBC had Ian Lee, who is an associate business professor at Carleton University, saying that by pushing for investments, governments are actually undermining the competitive process that determines the winners and the losers in a free market system in which we have. But before we get into his analysis, let's first hear what the argument is all about. Let's take a look at this first feature.
Another auto manufacturer has chosen Ontario to build electronic vehicles and batteries. And while Honda's big investment is drawing praise from both the Prime Minister and Premier, it's also going to cost taxpayers more than $5 billion.
This is historic. It's the largest auto investment in Canadian history. It's a tremendous win for Ontario, for our workers, for all of Canada.
Production at Honda's Alliston complex is about to shift into overdrive. An existing assembly plant will be retooled to produce fully electric vehicles. A new facility will also be built next door to make batteries for those EVs, along with 2 other plants that will produce battery components. The facility should be fully operational in 4 years and capable of pumping out 240,000 green vehicles per year.
Companies are investing in Ontario because we have created the environment and the conditions for companies to come here and thrive, prosper, and grow.
The Alliston plants are expected to create about 1,000 jobs. That's on top of the 4,200 people who already work there. Honda will be investing $15 billion, but there's plenty of taxpayer money involved as well. The Ford government will be giving the Japanese automaker $2.5 billion to help pay capital costs, and the federal government will be chipping in that same amount through federal tax credits.
Today, Honda is making Canadian automotive history. With this announcement, we will be investing to create Canada's first comprehensive electric vehicle supply chain from start to finish.
Both the Premier and PM are defending the use of tax dollars, but the federal Conservatives aren't so sure. A statement from opposition leaders reads in part, "We have seen before where Justin Trudeau announces massive subsidies that are supposed to create Canadian jobs, only to see him turn around and let those jobs be filled by foreign replacement workers. Conservatives will not let Justin Trudeau sell out Canadian union workers and taxpayers yet again."
Well, that's a very comprehensive news feature there by City News. They're covering all the bases, but we won't get into the political side of it. We're looking at the business aspect, and it's good to see that mainstream media, they voice their concerns, but it's not too biased or left-leaning or right-leaning, which is where we want to stay neutral in the middle. But to hear Ian Lee, let's switch over now to the CBC.
Well, for more on the economic impact of this latest EV investment, we have reached Ian Lee. Ian is an associate professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Ian joins me now. So what do you think? This is a multi-billion-dollar deal. It will be partly subsidized by federal tax credits. Do you think this is a good investment?
I'm very skeptical, Christine. I've been teaching strategy. I'm a former banker years ago, full disclosure, evaluating companies. And for the last 35 years, I've taught strategy, evaluating the competitiveness of companies and industries. And what I've learned, as Michael Porter, the great Michael Porter at Harvard Business School has taught us, is that the companies that are the most successful are those that compete in the marketplace where there's a winnowing out through price discovery, supply and demand, testing your ideas, putting your own money at risk in the marketplace. In this instance, this has been kicked out, so to speak. In other words, governments So this isn't a partisan issue. This is federal and provincial governments of each political party are undermining that competitive process that winnows out and determines the winners and losers. So they are picking those winners and losers, and the record in the past has not been successful at that. And the most recent example was Bombardier, great company.
Yeah, before he goes into the whole Bombardier analysis, I've always maintained that once government gets involved, it's a recipe for disaster, and what they do is create chaos. Once something doesn't happen and that money runs out, then the company will say they did not get enough. And what they will do is just try to lean on the resources or the various credits that the government have given them in order to push start, and not being very proactive in the way how they're going about doing business. And then what you don't have is a level playing field. Some will actually get going, but as the saying goes, if they didn't prepare a thorough layout of their business analysis and the strategies in terms of their long-term and mid-term and short-term strategy for growth, then it will bound to fail. And it is one of the reasons why I think that government should just move out of the way. All they need to do is just lay the foundation, move out of the way, and let persons who can actually run the businesses do it. Let them find their own funding. That doesn't mean there should be regulations and policies in place for them not to do business, but at the same time, no, it should be a way that it facilitates a level playing field, and this is not happening right about now. Taxpayers' money, and the government just seem to have this blank check that they can write utilizing taxpayers' money, and I personally have concerns with that. Let's continue.
Great technology backed by Quebec and federal government, and ultimately it failed.
Okay, so not a proven track record, but you also mentioned supply and demand, and this news comes on the backdrop of EV sales falling worldwide at the moment. How might this downturn affect the development of these projects?
Well, this is something else that worries me. There's only a handful of companies in the world, and this is what the late, brilliant Sergio Marchi used to say, the CEO of Chrysler Fiat. He said Chrysler Fiat wasn't big enough to survive. He said because the industry is becoming, the capital needs and the R&D are so gargantuan. And he argued that there's only going to be about 5 companies. The slowing down, or the slow market acceptance by large numbers of consumers in North America is not going to be the end of EVs. Let's be very clear. But what it's going to do is push back the widespread adoption, push back the widespread scaling up. What does that mean? It means that companies are going to have very, very deep pockets to fund that R&D, all those expenditures for the next several years, while they're not receiving revenues because the sales haven't yet taken off. And we like to think Canada's a great, big, rich, powerful country. We're 1.5 trillion, and we're competing against giants. The U.S. at 25 trillion GDP.
The thing about it is that a lot of these companies, let me use gas stations for example. In order to install one fast charger, you're looking at between $80,000 to $120,000 for those level 3 fast chargers, superchargers you're seeing standing around. And government offered incentives in order to build most of these chargers. A lot of the companies are waiting on those fundings in order to go ahead. And you have companies out there, say for instance ChargePoint, they have not yet broken through in terms of trying to get as much of those machines up and running in and around Canada. The terrain and our weather plays a crucial part in that as well. They made mention about EVs not selling as much right now. Price will eventually drop once you have more and more players into the market. As it is right now, $45,000 average for an electric vehicle, it doesn't sit well with the average consumer, and you don't have enough entering the used market. The used car market plays a pivotal role in terms of moving cars out of dealerships into the hands of ordinary average people who want that winter beater to move around. They're not seeing EV as a viable option to even get something on the second-hand market. Let's continue.
China at 20 trillion GDP, Japan, the European Union. And I don't think we have that kind of scale to take on the majors, as again, we saw with Bombardier taking on Airbus and Boeing, 2 of the largest companies in the world, and they failed, notwithstanding all of the support they received from government.
Ian, we just saw Ontario's Premier Doug Ford there, very happy. These plants are providing promises of thousands of jobs and billions in money into the industry, into Canada's GDP. How do you really argue with that? It seems like it would still be worth investing in.
If it was worth investing in, and if there really is a strong market, and I don't dispute I'm not disputing that there is a market, then firms will step up. That's the nature of private for-profit capitalism. Companies see a market, they will invest, they will go after it, they will pursue it. The idea that somehow these very large corporations and very profitable corporations called Volkswagen, called Honda, need the government to hold their hand and give them the money to make the strategic decision that they would have made if it was a stellar investment opportunity, it just isn't supported by 300 years of economic history and reality. This isn't economic theory.
And the funniest thing about VW, Volkswagen origins is out of Germany, and even they themselves has cut back and scaled back because electric vehicles were not doing as well in that country. In Germany, the automotive manufacturing sector makes up 1/5 of the total GDP in that country. So in order for them to come here, some incentive have to be given. And that is why they call it the corporate welfare system, the lure of getting them here in order to provide jobs. And I'm skeptical about this. I'm not pessimistic. I'm just skeptical that over the number of years, we've seen so many factories come and go, and the jobs go along with it. Because when push comes to shove, as how they call it, when it's actually crunch time, salaries are the biggest expenses for any company. And what they will do, they will lock shop and go somewhere else where the cost of production is going to be much, much lower. Say, for instance, they go to developing countries, they call them third world in the past, and they change the name. But if you can get the cost of production much lower in certain parts of the world, they will eventually go there, and they will actually go much nearer to where the raw materials and the logistics in terms of aligning with their supply chain in order to meet economies of scale. That's basically where it is. Canada has a lot of resources, untouched resources, untapped resources, but they're going to also have to create the mines to get these resources out of the ground and into the factories. And that in itself is another story. Let's continue.
Quoting you, this is the success of the decentralized, the highest income countries in the world, the OECD, where we have decentralized economies, where individual companies evaluate the risk and make commensurate investment decisions. In this instance, the government has taken over that risk-taking decision. And our record in Canada in this industry is not good. We've been in decline for 30-odd years in auto manufacturing. We have fallen out of the top 10. Anybody can Google this. The top 10 countries in the world for auto manufacturing. Canada's not there. Mm-hmm. And so we're a niche player.
Yeah, I hear you, and I guess the assumption is that the government is getting involved because they want 100% electric car sales by the year 2035, which is not that far away. And I understand your point about the big players, but what do you say? Canada is way behind and can't compete with players like China and the U.S., but shouldn't we try to build our manufacturing base so we can be competitive in the future?
It comes down to the optimal allocation of money. I'm not saying do nothing. I've never said that. So there's two issues. The one is the unemployment issue, and they say, look, it's going to create thousands of jobs. We're going to be diverting jobs, people that are in scarce demand, engineers and that sort of thing, from other industries into this industry. So what we're doing is we're just moving the employees around. Remember, we're facing massive labor shortages for the next 20, 30 years because of the decline of the birth rate. But the larger issue is there are other areas where we have huge comparative advantage, such as the mining industry. We should be going, there's only a handful of countries in the world that have the critical minerals needed to make the electric cars. So if we're that committed, then look, there's other countries that can do a much better job making the batteries in the cars. We should be going as fast as possible into the future, developing those critical minerals that are absolutely essential.
And the funniest thing is skipped over the birth rate issue. It is a fact that the birth rate has been falling in Canada over the last number of years, and it is one of the reasons why the government has been promoting and pushing for mass immigration into the country. And he made a very valid point. Where will the technical and specialized skills come from? Hopefully it will come from those individuals coming into the country with those various skills. because we have not been focusing on a lot of things. Another thing we fell victim to, we spent the last couple of years focusing on social issues like equality and DEI programs. And according to the Harvard Business Review and Business Studies, over 600 studies were done on DEI, and they have here showing why diversity programs actually fail. The graphs and the data and the analysis and the research have been there, but we tend not to look at the more important issues. We tend not to focus on the things that really matters. And that is part of the problem we're having right now in today's modern society. We're too easily distracted. Let's finish up this video.
Electric vehicles. If we don't have those 5 critical minerals that are well known, including lithium, then we will not have electric cars. So what I'm saying is it's a misdirection and misallocation of precious, scarce capital.
Ian, thank you for this. Very nutritious food for thought, as always. Associate Professor at the Sprott School of Business at the University, at Carleton University. That is Ian Lee.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
The funniest thing about this particular video and this particular feature, the comments were turned off. It would have been fun to see what a lot of people had to share. But as usual, you can share your thoughts in my comments below this particular video, and I will leave the link in the description box below. Let me know what you think. That has been the discussion all throughout the week. The big news coming out of Ontario, Canada. Honda will be constructing 4 new plants to manufacture electric vehicles here. Is it a plus? Is it a disadvantage? Let us know. Remember to grab a copy of my ebook, The Parts Manager Guide. Please smash that like button on your way out. It will only take you 1.5 seconds to do so. Until next time.